Welcome back to another podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. And today we're actually going to this is actually a suggestion, but someone wanted, well, actually a lot of people wanted me to talk about the journeys of self-taught developers, because I go over coding boot camps a lot. I go over people that graduate from a CS degree, but especially during a pandemic, it's understandable that you don't want to risk investing money into a program you might not be 100% confident in. And I want to show you that many developers make it without putting all of their money into programs like that. They make it on their own. And I think that's really cool. I know a lot of hiring managers that admire self-taught developers. And I think there is this growing admiration for people that have non-engineering backgrounds that somehow, some way learn what they need to do to actually make it into this field. So this is what this episode is about. So like normal, we're going to go ahead and start with the intros. Whitley, we'll start with you.
Cool. Hey, I'm Whitley. I am a web developer on the design team at Alert Media in Austin, Texas. And so I have been there about what I don't even know what day it is anymore. Time is nothing. I've been there since August. So not the new girl, but still the new girl. So, but yeah. And then, I think you said, Don, we'll get into like past jobs later, but I've just transitioned into the tech industry. So it's been a fun journey so far. And I'm really excited about where I'm at and where I'm going and pumped to talk about it. I really love this opportunity to share, where we've been, where we're going. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about who I am.
Cool. So we could actually mention during the intros what your previous background was too.
Oh, okay, cool. Time. Okay. I was actually for 8 years, a middle school teacher and coach. I taught, that's what I got my degree in. And I taught middle school math and social studies, not at the same time, but at different points in my career. And then I also coached volleyball, basketball, and track. And so I loved it. I loved the kids. But about a couple years ago, I just resigned in May. So that was another thing. I dodged the bullet of being a teacher in a pandemic, which I'm super thankful for. I was kind of realizing that, I love the kids and I love the connections and kind of the, I loved being a teacher and a coach, but I knew I didn't want to make the 30-year career. And, as a coach, I was having like 15-hour days, like multiple days a week. And, I'm also into writing and making music and my other relationships were suffering. Like I just wanted to change. And so, that was when I decided to try out coding and tech and see where that led me. And I'm to say happy is an understatement, but I'm super happy with where it's gotten me. So, yeah.
I'm really excited for you. That's a cool story.
Thank you. Thanks.
I will go left to right on my screen. For me, I'm technically not fully self-taught, but I am for most of what I've learned. But I'm a psychology major, and
oh, cool.
I became a lifeguard, then became a supervisor, then became an aquatics director. And I loved teaching swim lessons, and then I managed staff that did it. And I love doing it. It's a very, very underpaid career. And, but it is fulfilling, but I was, looking for different things. And what I found was every day that I would be stressed, and management is very stressful, and I would just go home and I would code. And that was my de-stressor. And it blew me away why, like, I would actually, to de-stress from work, I would actually invest my time into technology. And finally, it kind of just clicked, maybe I should be doing this. And the reason why I didn't was because I always thought you needed a CS degree. That held me back throughout my entire psychology degree. And when I discovered TeamTreehouse, that actually kind of gave me the boost of confidence. And I learned about the graduates from TeamTreehouse and people that got real developer jobs from that. And that gave me some inspiration. And so, yeah, I spent about a year and a half doing TeamTreehouse and went to coding bootcamp. But Yeah, if one thing I want to mention, I'm kind of going to leave the conversation to everyone else because, like I said, I'm not technically self-taught, but after going to a coding bootcamp, I can for sure say that you do not need a coding bootcamp. You do not need to invest a lot of money into it. If I would have known what I know now, if I would go back and do it all over again, I would do the self-taught route, 100%, save myself a lot of money. But yeah, Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, my name's Jeremy. I'm currently a principal engineer at GoHealth, which is based in Chicago. Nowadays I'm about 70% manager, but I still get my fingers into the code a little bit. I'm a little bit like you, Don. I code to de-stress. So if you ever look at my GitHub profile someday, you'll see a lot of random repos in various states of completion. That's me blowing off steam. That's how I do it. And before I got into a career as a software engineer, I was at various times a janitor, a help desk person, manual labor. There was a period of time where I had a family to take care of, and I had to move in with my parents, so I was kind of homeless. Eventually I landed here, and like Whitley, I couldn't be happier about where this career took me. So
that's awesome.
That's awesome.
And if you want to hear, go ahead.
No, I was thinking that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a cool story.
Yeah.
And after this episode, if you want to hear more about Jeremy, we actually invited him on for a previous episode of what it was like to work at Google as a software engineer too. So check that out.
Wow.
All right. Aaron, how about you?
So my name is Aaron. I am a software developer at Change Healthcare. So I've been there since May of this year. Yeah, so May of this year. Before that, I was a software engineer at Warner Media. So that was a lot of fun. Got to dig into advertising, which was very interesting. I started out in a couple different things. Started out in healthcare field first, and then kind of winded my way up into customer service. Did the customer service for Apple, did Apple Care, did phones and laptops and things like that. And then kind of worked my way up to a manager. Started working at SaaS companies, and there kind of found a love. Still had a love of technology, right? But I really found a love of being able to kind of help customers solve issues. So a lot of times I would see issues that would come in, and I'd say, you know what? This seems like a small bug that I probably could fix. Like, I know I could probably do something with this, like just JavaScript code, like small things. I'd see engineers. I was like, what makes them better? What makes them smarter than me? I'm sure I could probably do this. So I started to learn, just a little bit by little bit. But yeah, it was in the customer service industry, and then, just hard work and dedication. We'll get into it, long nights, and but was able to become a developer. So I think I echo what Whitley and Jeremy said. It's awesome. I love it. Every single day is just great.
That's awesome. So actually, I just want to clarify, what was the exact position that all of you were in right before you became a software engineer? Whitley, I know you were a teacher, right?
Teacher and coach, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, teacher and coach. What about Jeremy?
I was working help desk for a company that managed computers for small schools, rural schools.
Okay. How about you?
And I was a support manager for a company called SalesLoft.
Okay, perfect. I'll probably put that in the title. That's exactly what I was asking too. Okay, cool. So definitely different backgrounds. That's what I love to hear. And what I want to do is let's kind of go over our journeys of, when you decided to start learning how to code until you finally get that first position. And I think it would be helpful. We'll kind of like turn it into a conversation after this, but we'll do this one at a time. Whitley, We'll start with you if you kind of just want to take us through how you got here.
Cool. So, I was teaching, and my total teaching career was 8 years, but around year 6 is when I started getting that really burnt out feeling, and I loved what I was doing, and I was passionate about the kids and just being a positive role model for them. But I realized that I wasn't passionate about becoming a better teacher and, how to teach the new way of math and like how to teach social studies, and I just really feel like if you're passionate about something, you want to keep growing in it. You never reach an end point. And so I knew that, especially in teaching, that if I was at that point, that wasn't going to help anybody, especially my students. So, so this is year 6 around, I guess, what was that? 2018, I guess. And so I was talking to some people about how I felt, and my dad actually was like, "Why don't you look into coding? Like, there's a big need there, and you've always been into technology." And granted, I've always loved the newest gadget and new softwares and things like that, but I never had experience with coding. And so I was like, okay, I'll try that. That seems like something I could do. And I've seen some really cool people, on social media that are coding for a living, and, I want to be friends with them, so maybe I can be them. So I started with free code camp. That was recommended to me before putting any money into anything. And so I got on there and I was hooked immediately. Just with HTML and CSS, I was like, whoa, I can design cool stuff, and and the problem solving of it, like you have an issue, and then when you see it click and it's fixed, there's little that is more satisfying than that, just especially on free code camp, you get like a big old green check mark, and that's just really, I don't know, it was really cool for me. So about a month of playing around with that, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I started looking into more structured boot camps, and I actually, my first stop was a program called Thinkful. So I signed up for that, and it was great. But it wasn't for me. Being in the industry now and kind of knowing more than I did then, I think it'd be great for a more back end person. The way it's structured and laid out, it just wasn't for me. The structure, a lot of success stories there. I don't want to come off as dogging it. I just want to say that it was a great program, and the mentorship was awesome. I still talk to the mentor I had through that program, but I started branching out and looking for new ones. And that's when I came upon TeamTreehouse, and immediately fell in love with that program. It was, the biggest thing between the first program I tried in Treehouse is that Treehouse really broke it down, kind of like free code camp. It was just unit by unit, and I just felt successful every time I got, you passed or you moved on to the next level. Maybe it's the gamer in me, but that just really worked for me. So Treehouse started April 2019. My whole journey started, sorry, I know I'm going kind of out of order here, but the whole boot camp journey started in the end of 2018. And then I started Treehouse in April 2019. And then I did the front end web development program through them and graduated in December 2019. So fast math, how many months is that? 9 months? May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. 8. We don't need to count. It's fine.
That's what computers are for.
Yeah, that's what computers are for. Exactly. We don't need to count. And I was like, nobody's going to see me count on my fingers, but we're recording this. So cool. Anyway, I graduated in December 2019. Pretty much immediately started looking for jobs. And May of 2020 of this year, which teachers and schools, of course, are already at home, learning at home. But I got an interview with a company in Austin for a junior level software engineer. And it was a startup. And I worked there for about 2 months, and then everybody got laid off. Main reason being the pandemic, but there's some other shady stuff there. So it was a blessing in disguise for sure. And then a month later, a very stressful month later, I was just about to start filling out teaching applications again. And then I got an intro call with Alert Media, and 2 weeks later I was hired. So yeah, it was an up and down journey for sure. But yeah, I finally found my tech career home at Alert Media for now.
That's really cool. And I'm a huge fan of that story just because of TeamTreehouse.
Aren't they awesome?
I advertise it all the time for people that don't want to go to a coding boot camp. It's fantastic. I see.
Yeah, and it's just
slick looking t-shirt in the bottom right too.
Oh my gosh, I know. It's like of course I did the tech degree, because I wanted everything, and I wanted the piece of paper to show at the end. But like, you don't have to do that. You can get some awesome lessons for, way less a month. It's just, they're so willing to suit you for wherever you are. And they're just awesome. I still hang out in the Slack channels and stuff because everybody there is so cool.
That's really cool. Okay, so I'm going to share mine really quickly, and we'll keep going. But I was an aquatics director, and I quit thinking I could become a developer in 3 months. And I'm not saying you can't, but I only saved up for enough for 3 months. And I found very quickly that I started with TeamTreehouse, and it's a really, really good program. But I probably didn't put the full amount of effort that I should have. And I ended up getting a part-time job teaching swim lessons because while I was quitting as an aquatics director, I still wanted to be involved with children. I love children. I think it's a lot of fun. And it kind of I found it was a good plan for me because coding nonstop is very stressful. And then being able to just let loose and teach swim lessons, that was kind of another de-stressor for me. So, but I actually, Jeremy, you kind of alluded to some of this in your past, but I ended up kind of bounced from home to home, just trying to have a roof over my head and food. And because it did take a lot longer to be able to do what I wanted to do. And I ended up moving back so a year and a half I spent at TeamTreehouse. And so before I tell the moving story, I realized that I went through all of TeamTreehouse's courses, and I felt like I really knew enough to become an entry-level developer, but I didn't apply it towards projects. And there was a huge wake-up call because TeamTreehouse is really good at teaching what it does, and a good course will make you feel confident in what you know. And unfortunately, you have to expect that you probably don't know as much as you think you know until you apply it, until you reinforce it. And so I started applying a year and a half later with really only a few projects under my belt, and I was a perfectionist, and I'd keep working on the same project, same problem, just trying to make it a little bit better, and got a wake-up call that I was not prepared for a junior level position to get into the industry yet. But I love that moment. I actually love that moment of getting rejected because that's when I finally discovered what I actually need to do. Like the rest of everything that I need to do, I discovered from that one PHP interview. And that was amazing. And I realized I don't want to work with PHP as well. And I spent so much time with it on TeamTreehouse. But I did want to work with JavaScript. And I loved when I dove more into even just the concept of a framework. I liked cleaning up my code. I liked focusing on architecture. It was fun for me. And so, about that time, about a year and a half later, is when I realized I have a huge gap in JavaScript. And I at the time, I didn't trust myself to be able to learn it. I thought I would give up. I was running low on money. And so I did. It's weird because I it's easier to go into debt with a loan than pay your own bills. Like I was kind of in that situation,
Man, that is so true.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
And so I did. But, and that's when I went to a coding boot camp. But in order to do that, I ended up having to move back in with my mom when I was like 27 years old. I had to really put aside my pride a little bit to do that. But I'm glad I did. I'm really glad I did. And I went to a coding boot camp, and that kind of supplemented my knowledge. But I can't stress this enough. You don't need a coding boot camp. I know everything. Like if I could go back and redo it and just at least have a plan or an outline, I mean, that's really what people need. And but yeah, that's pretty much how. And then actually the last thing, while I was learning, I would live stream on Twitch, and I would code on Twitch, and I would do it multiple times a week.
Oh, cool.
And
Nice.
I would teach developers what I was learning. And I thought like no one would want to know what I know. I don't even have a software engineering position. And then I average like 50 viewers for not even being partnered, and it actually takes a while to get like a good number of viewers on Twitch. And I like the first person that hired me actually hired me because I took a chance to live stream on Twitch, and he was a gamer. And it's funny because you can relate in very quirky avenues that you never expect with your first hiring manager. And that's why I always encourage people to put themselves out there with blog posts, videos if they can, audios,
Absolutely.
anything like that, because you never know who's going to hear it.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
true.
But
That's very true.
Yeah, that's me though. What about you, Jeremy?
So I'm going to betray how old I am here. When I first wrote some code, I was a kid. Dial-up wasn't really a thing. I had it wasn't old at the time. Now it would be old. It was a Tandy 1000HX. No hard drive. You had to swap floppy drives to make anything work. Like
Floppy drive.
we bought a second.
Whoa.
We bought a second floppy drive so we could run our operating system disk in one, and then swap the game disks in the other. But DOS came with GW Basic, and so I decided one day, I don't know why, I had just read a science fiction book. I forget the name of it, but it had this sort of game that you could play on paper in it called Conway's Game of Life. If you hang out in certain computer science circles, you'll hear about it. And I decided I'd played it on paper before, and I decided I was going to try and implement it in BASIC to see if I could. And that was enough to hook me right there as a hobby to learn to code. But it was a lot harder back then. Like you didn't have manuals, or there wasn't the internet to go off of. So I'm a little bit jealous of some of you guys' stories actually, because like I didn't have TreeHouse. It wasn't there for me. I had to sort of muddle along on my own. But I kept at it just as a hobby for pretty much the rest of my life. It's really still my hobby. And I don't do it in BASIC anymore. I do it in much more advanced languages, although BASIC will always have a slight nostalgic spot in my heart because of that. I never finished college. I attended for 3 years. I was going to be a virus hunter, which would have been really interesting at this current time period.
Yeah.
But I got married, had kids, started working to support them, and ended up dropping out due to money. So I never finished, and was sort of resigned to having a career doing blue collar type work for the rest of my life. But we always had a computer. Sometimes I built them from pieces scavenged from the trash. And there were a couple low periods where I wanted to sell it to make ends meet, but my wife wouldn't let me. I think she knew where that was leading more than I did. So if we fast forward a little bit, we've had to move in with my parents. I've got 4 children, 5 actually at that point. Yeah, 5. I have 5 kids.
Wow.
Wow.
And so we're all living in my parents' house, and my brother and I are trying to make a startup work. And I'm doing some Perl at the time. And this is when Perl is sort of on the downcline. Like, no one really does Perl anymore. It's all legacy code, and there's a few places that are doing new Perl, but for the most part, it doesn't have buzz. And it was just losing its buzz then. But that happened to be lucky for me, because I was building stuff in Perl. I had a website, a blog that I was posting on about what I was building. So I was putting myself out there. We didn't have Twitch at that time, so blogs was what it was. And there was a company in Chicago who was looking for Perl programmers and having trouble finding them. And so I got my first real job interview out of that, and clicked with the interviewers. They took a chance on me. I worked there for a year. That company got bought by Google. Google decided to keep me around. I was at Google for 7 years.
Wow.
Left Google for another company. And now I'm at not VAE, that was the company after Google, but now I'm at Go Health. I'm a principal engineer, and I'm managing other engineers. And I, as a hiring manager, I actually do look out for people who are self-taught, because I know what that's like and I know what it takes. And that's a strong signal to me of someone who can do that is going to be, if nothing else, they're going to be a bulldog on whatever like problem I put them on. They're not going to give up. They're going to figure it out. If it takes them, like, they'll find a way, because that's what it takes when you're learning to code.
Wow.
Cool.
Yeah, that's
amazing.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
I want to watch
you
that
guys'
full
stories are
podcast right
amazing
now.
too. Like, I'm not the star of the show, so.
Imagine if your wife just said, yeah, sell that computer. You lucked out finding her to believe in you.
Be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I could talk forever about how much I lucked out finding her, but that's not the subject of the
We can get her on the
podcast,
show.
That sounds, that's a really inspirational story. Wow. Okay. Aaron, how about you?
Yeah. I don't know if I can top that.
Hey, it's your story. It's unique.
So mine kind of started years ago. So this was I after high school, I started. I wanted to become a nurse. That's what I wanted to do. So I went to school. I was gonna do that, but I realized school's not my thing. Like, I already went to high school. I don't like going to school. I don't like doing that stuff. So I was like, So I eventually kind of dropped out. I started kind of working. I kind of knew some stuff, so I started working like as a phlebotomist. So just doing some of that stuff. And then I went to school for massage therapy. I was like, oh, well, let me do some massage therapy. So I was a massage therapist for a year or so doing that. And then I was like, this is stressful. There's like a lot of like physical work involved. I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. So I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I know I wanted to do something with technology. So I started looking at jobs, and I started doing a work at home program doing customer service for Kelly Services. So doing that for a while. And about that time, I was like, you know what? I had just got my first iPhone, and I was like, you know what would be really cool? If I could make myself an iPhone app, that would be really cool. So I was like, yeah, I'm just going to jump on. I'm just going to jump on the internet, Google how to make an app, and I'm just going to make an app. That's what I was going to do. So I bought some Udemy courses. I was like, okay, let me sit down, do it. I had realized that I need to go get a MacBook. So I was like, let me go get a MacBook. I got this old rusty thing, old MacBook. I was like, okay, let's do that. And my work fortunately allowed me to kind of use their stuff. I talked to my manager. I was like, hey, can I use this can I download some stuff? And they're like, yeah, sure. Just do it on your own time. I was like, okay, cool. So I downloaded Xcode. I was going through the Udemy courses, and I quickly realized that you get stuck in this thing called tutorial purgatory. And I was following along with the instructor, but as soon as I tried to build something of my own, I was like, okay, so we just went over loops. What is a loop?
That's exactly.
And I'm like, I would love to know. I was like, I'm going to build this app. I'm sure I need a loop, but I don't know what a loop does. So how can I do it? So, it was, I completely kind of failed, and, I kind of gave up on it. I did. I gave up on it. I failed hard. So fast forward a couple years, get married, and don't have any kids by this point, but I start kind of dabbling with it again a little bit, and still thinking I can make an iOS app. I failed yet again. Second time, that's strike number 2. Failed again. Fast forward again, I have a kid. I'm working at some SaaS companies, starting to work at SalesLoft as a support manager. This is kind of by the time I'm like, you know what? I tried to make an iOS app. I said, but the tickets that I'm getting in are JavaScript kind of front end related. I was like, well, maybe I could start jumping into JavaScript, because, Objective-C and then Swift, I was like, it just didn't speak to me. When you have like a language that just speaks to you, you're like, oh, yeah. So I started looking into JavaScript, and I was like, this makes sense. And I jumped on Code Academy first, and started doing some stuff like that. And I loved completing the stuff, like you said, like the check mark. It was awesome. Going through that, it was like motivational, right? And I got some inspiration from the engineering department at SalesLoft. There was a lot of great engineers, super smart people. And they were like, you know what? Find yourself maybe a boot camp or something like that to kind of help you. And I was like, well, I don't have the money for a boot camp. Those are things that are like $4,000 or $5,000. I can't do that. So I started looking around, trying to figure out what I could do to kind of teach myself. And I stumbled upon Treehouse. It was amazing. So I started doing the regular courses for like $25 a month. And I quickly found out that I needed something a little bit more structured to kind of walk through. So they had a tech degree. It was like $200, right? And I was like, you know what? Let me just go ahead and do that. I can afford that. Let me go ahead and do that. And it was amazing. It's very structured, kind of helps you kind of teach yourself, get into a Slack channel with other people. And that's where you kind of really kind of learn how to interact with like future developers, right? So you kind of think of yourself as a developer. And as you start going through, you complete project after project after project. So I started that in April or March or April of 2019.
Same time I did.
Yeah. I went into the full stack JavaScript tech degree, and I jumped in and I was like, I'm determined to get this. I feel like I'm a slow learner, so I feel like I need to like really just delve in. So what I would do is I'd wake up at like 4 a.m., get to work, code, and then do my regular job, like starting at 9 a.m. and then like code at 12. I'd be like in the lunch area, like bugging developers. Hey, like I need help with this. Like, can you help me like look at this? And they'd be like, oh yeah, let me, I can help you with this. And then after work, go home, code until like midnight. And I would do that. I did that for 4 months. Yeah, from April to June, July. Is when I graduated the full stack tech degree. So, I was like, I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out. Like, I just kept at it. After that, I got some help from some of my mentors, just kind of prepping my resume, things like that. I wanted to stay at the company that I was at, SalesLoft, but they didn't have any positions open at the time. So I started to look elsewhere. Got a contracting job with Warner Media, and that kind of the rest was history. So I recently actually went back. I'm in the Slack channels too, like you said, Whitley, in the Slack channels as well. And I recently spoke for some new graduates that were coming out. And that was really cool to be able to do that. And I remember like being new, it was like, oh man, am I going to be able to find a job? Like so scared, just like shaking, like, just give me a chance, put me in, coach. Like
exactly.
So yeah, that's my story. Lots of failure, but persistence.
Beautiful. I like that.
Yeah, and you really, I can already see why you got hired. You have a really positive energy. I think a lot of people would like working with you. That's really cool to hear your story. And
your story's every bit as good as mine there, man. So don't cut yourself short.
Yeah, it is. Well, first of all, Team Treehouse, I think it's about time you sponsor me. Anyone that's watching
For real.
on Team Treehouse, or if anyone knows anyone from Team Treehouse and sees this video, reach out to them. They are my ideal sponsor. I love them. I always talk about them. So just throwing that out there. But so I think that's really cool. And actually, I hadn't really met too many people in the tech degree with Team Treehouse too. And it sounds like it's interesting because you feel confident in what it taught you, but you also, like, you hear about this with a lot of programs. You're like, but I didn't need all of this. Now that I know what I know, it's like I could have done, I think Team Treehouse offers like the $25 a month just to go through the courses and to go through the tracks. It's just interesting how, I don't know. It's interesting when you're on the other side and you're trying to get a position, it just seems like it's impossible. And that's why I really encourage you, do online meetups, right now, meet other software engineers and listen to their path, listen to their story, because you're going to realize that it is very doable. And a lot of people feel like it's hopeless. And so, I think your stories are really inspirational. So what I actually want to do, I definitely want to dive into some of the mistakes we made, but I want to go over kind of a few questions people like really get stuck on with the self-taught developer path, and maybe you can help them out. So, one thing is when people realize they think they like coding and they're still kind of in that discovery phase, what would be a piece of advice for them to solidify maybe like a stack that they want to learn, a direction that they want to go, the types of apps that they want to build? How do you figure that out? And I did promise to give this context. They had no time to prepare. I didn't give them any of these questions. So feel free to take a minute to think about it.
I think one of the challenges when you're self-teaching is staying motivated. Like both Whitley and Aaron talked about how useful that green check mark in Treehouse is. Like, I did it. Like, I've accomplished something. You want to do something else to get that small hit. What I did was, I'd pick a small thing, not a big thing. Like, I wasn't going to try and create a monster app or something, but I would just pick a small thing that did something I wanted, and I'd build it. Like, it started with Conway's Game of Life because I wanted to create a game so I could play it. Other like funny stories, like my brother and I used to like play some games that were written in BASIC that came with it, and I wanted to cheat. So I had to look at and figure out how to read the source code so I could modify it. So then I could win against my brother, and then he's a software engineer too now. But then he would like do the reverse to me, like figure out how to make it so he'd win. Small things like that. But they give you like a way to see incremental progress for yourself. And they're going to teach you like what things you really enjoy. Like, I'm a back-end guy. I did JavaScript back when it was way harder, actually. It's a lot easier now. Browsers used to really suck. That's understating it. But I've always preferred to do the stuff that powered the page rather than building the page itself. That's where I gravitated to. I like command line tools, so I build those. So that's where I tend to be. But I find a lot of it like, where do your interests align? And that sort of is going to inform the things you want to build. And that gives you that boost. Once you succeed building one thing, you're like, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Or maybe it was, but I made it. And like, so what's the next thing that's just a little bit more complicated that I want to improve or like do for fun? That gives me that additional, like, I accomplished something. I made a goal. I met that goal. I made it happen. I bent the computer to my will. And there's that creative act, I think, is what keeps us moving on the path.
And that's really rewarding to solve your own problem that helps you out in life too. And I think a lot of people get burned out because they're building these tutorial-driven apps that they're not going to use. They're not going to introduce to the user base. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help anyone else. And it's kind of just learning. It's like building out a project just so you can learn something. And I do think it's a lot more rewarding to build out a project to solve an actual problem that's going to help someone. And I think it's easier to start off helping yourself. I think it's more rewarding. And because it's, I've talked about like building apps for users, and it's not very motivating for people. Like, I thought, because like the concept of building an app and gaining user base behind it where it makes other people's lives better, it's a kind idea. It's a really interesting idea. But when you're not, what am I trying to say? I think it's a little bit more realistic and doable to start off solving your own problem, because I think people get overwhelmed. I think perfectionism starts kicking in when you're trying to think about what other people want. And I think it's easier and more tangible to think about the simple problem that you will solve in your own life, because you know that problem very, very well. And a lot of companies are built by, a starting co-founder that's technical, solving their own problem. They're their best user. They at least have that one user that can, where they can prioritize the right features, and then, additionally gain users down the road. But I think it's really rewarding to build an app for yourself. But the thing is, when I ask this, a lot of people say, well, I don't like, they're not able to connect technology with solving their own problems. And that's where the disconnect happens. And that's the tricky thing, but that's really the question they need to start with. Well, you need to figure that out. How can you use technology to solve your own problem? You might have to learn quite a bit, but maybe that's the journey you start with.
Yeah. And
exactly.
It doesn't have to be a massive problem, right? And there's so many great ways to do it now. Like, if you want to learn JavaScript, create a bookmark of it. Just a little bit of blurb of JavaScript that goes in your browser bar that solves a problem you encounter every day when you're visiting that one site that drives you a little nuts. And it may be a really small amount of code, but it solves your problem and you learn something, and then that gives you the confidence to go, well, I could do that. I could do another slightly more complicated thing that I didn't think I could do before. It scared me, but now it doesn't scare me as much because I've learned so much in the last project. And each one pushes you a little bit.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was thinking, I like that. I think when I was starting, I can't remember. I think I was kind of stuck. Don, what you were saying, some of the listeners were saying, they don't quite know, they can't quite connect how technology solved their problem. But for me, I kind of was stuck in that kind of space where I saw how technology could solve other people's problems, with tickets coming in, working at an actual company and stuff like that. But I didn't see how it could solve my problems. I was kind of figuring out well, how can I solve a problem that someone was having, right? But as I started to learn JavaScript more in depth, you start to get a technical mind. You start to hear other people having issues, and you're like, I wonder if I could build an app to fix that, or I wonder if I could do this. Just recently, my wife is a graphic designer, so she was complaining a couple weeks ago, and she was like, she's like, I go to these sites, like I get these design briefs, and these companies want me to like make a logo for them, or like, make this thing for them, but I need to know like what the colors of the website are. So then I have to go to the website, and I have to open the dev tools, and I have to go in, I have to take a look at it, and then I have to do this, and like by the time it's like an hour, and I'm like, well, would it help you if I made a Chrome extension that you could automatically just pop up, and then you could just see the colors and the fonts and all the images on the page? And she was like, yeah, that'd be great. So that's what I'm doing, building that. And that's like, we're prototyping that, and she's using it now. And I'm like, wow, like I actually built something that somebody used, like, stuff like that. I think is like, if you don't, if you can't quite connect a problem maybe to your problem, then try to connect it to someone else's, right? Like you can ask people, everybody has problems, right? So you can ask them like, what's an issue that you're facing? Like something, right? That maybe your friend is facing. Could be a small problem, could be a big problem, whatever it is. And then try to solve that with code, right? Like try to go into that mindset. But I think the biggest thing is like Jeremy's saying, like have those incremental wins, but keep like a big why in front of you, because motivation is not always consistent, right? So, and that it comes for everything, whether you're trying to lose weight or whether you're trying to learn how to code, program, whatever it is. Right. Motivation is not going to keep you going. You need to figure out what is your big why. Like, why are you actually doing this? Like, what is your end goal? And do you actually want to accomplish it, right? So is your end goal to like make a bunch of money? Because that's probably not going to be good enough to keep you going, right? Like, oh, I'm going to make like, 6 figures starting out. It's like, it's probably not the best thing to keep you going, right? But, exactly, do I want to feed my family? Like, am I doing this to take care of my family? Oh, okay. Well, that's a big motivational factor, right? You got kids, you got a wife, you got like, people that count on you, or, I'm doing this to take care of myself. I'm doing this so that, I feel a sense of accomplishment, something that you can hold on to and kind of keep as your North Star. And that'll help you drive through whatever challenges you may face. That helped me.
That was really good. I'm motivated. Go build something right now and figure out my why. You're gonna have to keep me updated on that extension, because I could really use that for what I do. So
yeah, it's called my wife named it. I named it. I'm horrible at naming things. Horrible at naming things. I was gonna name it like the JavaScript background, something. And my wife was like, no. Name it Getter. And then like, I'll design a logo for it. And then like name it Getter. I was like, yeah, because you have like getters on CSS. You get whatever you, okay. Yeah.
She's good.
Yeah. She's very good. So it's going through prototyping and adding new features and things like that. And so hopefully it'll be released at some point.
Sweet. That's awesome.
You really, I didn't think about it like this, but I like how you said, well, sometimes you really emphasized sometimes people can't connect technology with solving the problems. And we were talking about that a bit. And then your recommendation was, well, maybe just dive into the fundamentals. And as you dive further into the technology, you have more knowledge to be able to relate that technical stack to actually solving a problem. And I think that's really good advice. Something I've never really thought about, though. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'll mention also, so for a while, Conway's Game of Life was my learn a new language thing. Because once I did it a couple times, I understood it really well. Like how it was supposed to work, what the basics of like creating one of these was. And so every time I was going to learn a new programming language, I was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to implement that, because then I don't have to worry about the problem, like the definition of the problem I'm trying to solve. That's already well understood. All I'm wondering about is how do I express this in that language that I'm trying to learn?
Right.
So getting little things like that, like pet problems is what I used to call it. These are my pet problems. Like they're solved already in some sense, but I like to keep them around because they're useful for getting to know or understand a new framework, language, or whatever. If I can figure out how to express it in that, then that I'm a little bit faster at learning that new thing. So those I think can be helpful, where you're like, this class of thing, you're like, I like to use these as my figure out how to do X in new technology that I'm exploring.
I like that.
Oh.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's good advice for transitioning into a new language, not having to worry about that same problem again. What about, okay, so I have a few extra things that I wanted to tackle, but time is flying by. So we have 25 minutes left at max. Let's dive into the mistakes we made. Where'd we screw up? Like if you had to go back and redo some of the things, becoming a software engineer, just to make it a little bit easier, to get that position a little bit faster, what would you do differently?
Oh, man.
I could start with just one thing I would do differently. A year and a half went by without me applying to any positions whatsoever. And I thought I was on the right path. I thought I wanted a PHP position. And it wasn't until I met other PHP developers and I went into a PHP interview that I realized, first of all, what I definitely did not want to do for the rest of my life. And what I was still lacking, even in that PHP interview, I didn't do well at all. And I wasn't really sure what employers were looking for. I wasn't sure how they even tested me, right? You can read articles online, but everyone says different things. It's data structures. It's, going over a specific challenge, or like going over the fundamentals of specific syntax of a language, or it's a take-home project, and like what? Can't study for everything. Like, how am I supposed to prepare for all of this? And I wish I would have went to interviews a lot sooner. I think I didn't have enough confidence to do it, and I kicked myself for it. But I would recommend to people, if you have your first project up, 3 months into it, start applying to a few different companies. See if you hear back. You might not get it, but you can at least develop a system, like kind of like a benchmark where you can measure how much responses you're getting compared to the knowledge that you currently have and what you have to showcase. And I think it's, healthy to have that, to be able to measure and have that incremental progress that you can see yourself progressing through. So I wish I would have interviewed sooner. That's for me.
Yeah, that's good. I'd probably second that. Yeah. Go ahead.
This is maybe a little bit related. What I would have done differently, knowing in retrospect, is I would have joined some user groups.
I like that.
They don't cost anything. They're very welcoming. There's one for any language that you can pick. Imagine, right? If you're in an urban center, there's probably more than one that you can find. And just do a Google search for if you're a JavaScript programmer, JavaScript user groups. And they're going to be meeting somewhere, and you will get an opportunity to talk to some people who do it every day and find out what do they talk the lingo, essentially, right? Because developers, we have a language, and we talk it to each other, and we use weird terms like foo and bar, and everyone who's not a developer is looking at us like, what is that?
Yeah.
Right. But also you're going to learn what your gaps are. And as you form those friendships, you're going to build a network of people who are like, hey, that Jeremy guy's not that bad. He's on the market. Why don't we hire him? And it's completely free for you. I used to not, because I thought they're going to know I'm a fraud. I didn't want to go because I didn't want to show all those really smart programmers all the stuff I didn't know. But the reality is that all of us developers, we love teaching other people what we do, especially if that person is interested. It's actually kind of hard to find if they're not other people who aren't developers yet, who are into what we do or are going to do the work to understand what we do. And so they're very welcoming environments, and I highly encourage anyone to like find one. They don't care if you're a paid programmer or developer, you're still welcome. If you're interested in what they're doing, that's all they really care about. And they're more than happy to teach you in that environment what it is to be a developer in that language or framework or whatever.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think looking back on it, I think I would have, if I could change my mindset, I would have put more emphasis. And I think you touched on this, Don. I would have put more emphasis on the projects and the actual application of like what I was learning in TreeHouse. I knew where I wanted to get to. I wanted a job. And so and up until this point, I had been in school, I mean, technically my entire life. And it's always, listen to the teacher, do your homework, turn it in and get the grade. And so I couldn't get out of that mindset of like, I just need that certificate and to show the potential employer, and that wasn't what was going to get me the job. It might get me a second glance, maybe like, oh, she did study something. But honestly, I think if I had to go back and do it again, I would have slowed down on the projects, and I would have maybe, TreeHouse allows you to do kind of the basic, like, here's the standard bulleted list, like make sure you have this. And then it has the kind of, what do you call it? Extra credit, if you will. It's a teacher in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did most of the time I did do the little bit extra, but I don't know. I feel like I could have gotten a lot more if I just would have slowed down and really took those projects step by step and understood what I was doing each step of the way. It at least would have helped me with the new lingo, because that's honestly transitioning into this career or transitioning into any industry. You're having to learn a new language. No pun intended, but we're learning a new language, but we're also learning a new languages and vocabulary. I mean, people, in interviews and in the job I have now, they abbreviate words that I've never abbreviated before, like what is prod? Oh, product. Okay. Like it's just like, I think I would have, if I could go back, I would change my mindset and slow down a little bit and just build and apply what I'm hearing and learning. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. One thing that reminds me of is like TeamTreehouse kind of sections the courses out in different categories, and it does it really well, and it breaks it up very well. Mm-hmm. And, kind of pretty much what you're saying is stop going. So are you pretty much saying like stop going through the course material so fast and start reinforcing what you're learning as you go? And you can even come up with like small projects, like how did the lesson I just learned, how could that solve a problem in real life?
Right. Exactly.
And build a mini little app with it. It doesn't have to be super complex. It'd be very small and very specific, but I like that. Yeah.
And, I just wasn't, it's easy to say this now, but I wasn't used to that. You go into a teaching interview and they want to see that diploma and they want to see that certification, and, that goes a long way. But, when you step into a tech interview, they want to see what you can do. And sometimes right then and there, or sometimes they just want to see a project or walk you through. They want you to walk them through something that you built. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
Cool.
I'm going to go on a tangent if I don't stop. So.
I do that all the time.
And it's so easy to like put yourself out there for the stuff you build. Like one of the things I ask hiring to collect for me before I even like view the resume or interview the person at work is, do they have a public repo somewhere? GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, like the platform itself doesn't matter so much, so long as they've written something for themselves that's out there that I can go look at And that is that's a strong signal to me that they're motivated about the craft of creating software. And I can go see what they're motivated to solve and how they approach it. And here's the funny secret about interviewing. If you can compose a function to solve a problem posed in the interview on a whiteboard, you are better than 70% of the other candidates who are going to go through that room. It's just the reality. When you start interviewing, you begin to realize, the first time I interviewed someone, I was worried he was going to be smarter than me. And how do you interview someone smarter than you? Well, actually, you just hire them because they're smarter than you, and that's a no-brainer, right? But I wasn't thinking that at the time. And after about my 10th interview, I was like, wait a minute. For some reason, 70% of the people would struggle in the interview where I wouldn't. And so that was kind of eye-opening in some ways. So the more you build, the more comfortable you're going to be taking a problem that's given to you and translating it into a solution in some way. And I think that's a skill that's really valuable in the interview room. We tend to go through your algorithms and stuff, and those are important. But the thing I look for the most in an interview is, can they take a problem, break it down, and then express the solution to that problem in code for me? And if they can do that, I'll forgive a whole lot of other things. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to care if they forgot a semicolon. I don't care if they misspelled the name of that API. What I really care about is, could they break down the problem and express it in code and solve it? And the more things you build, I think the better you get at that.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. I like your insights too. I think it was really good bringing you on just with your experience as a hiring manager as well. You bring a lot of neat insights, a lot of very encouraging insights. And it very much relates to, I had a head instructor at Full Stack Academy that, we didn't believe him, but he's like, you're above 90% of people that you're going to be competing with. I don't think you realize, all the people come from all sorts of different backgrounds, and a lot of people, they don't code, 40 to 60 hours a day like you've been doing through this coding boot camp. And a lot of them, they're trying, and they'll eventually get there. But a lot of people that go through interviews, a lot of them they screw up on a simple loop, let alone trying to explain how recursion works and show that in a solution. And it's just, I don't know. I find it very inspiring to hear that, because I was always discouraged. I had no confidence in interviews. And it was very inspiring to hear that as long as you put a good amount of effort into, working on projects and having an interest and motivation for continuing to solve these problems, you're going to continue to get good enough to where you're going to be extremely competitive. And I think people had, your mindset, Jeremy, of worried about the other person in the room being smarter than them. And most people that are motivated to code, most people that really enjoy it, they end up doing really well once they start applying to positions and they realize they're almost there. Even if they don't finally get that position, they're so close to finally getting it. I think I'm just rambling right now. Like I said, Whitley, I do that all the time, but it's just inspirational it's inspirational just to hear your side from the hiring side of things. That's all I'm saying.
Agreed.
I think I've been sitting here and thinking, just trying to figure out what kind of mistakes I know I've made a lot of mistakes, right? I think for me, it kind of boils down to three things that kind of, I think both of you kind of touched on, all of you touched on. For me, it was, I would have started building projects sooner. Definitely started building projects sooner. And then being more vulnerable. So I started blogging, but not as soon as I should have. So I have a blog out there, just blogged about just stuff that I was learning. But I should have started as soon as I started learning. That's when I should have started blogging, but I didn't. And I was thinking, well, I don't know enough to blog. But you'll be surprised how much information is repetitive out there, but it's repetitive in a good way, because the way that one of my mentors told me this, like the way that you write may influence someone differently than the way that someone else writes. So you may be able to explain how you're learning something in a different way that resonates with other people, because we all know going through and learning something is hard, but it only takes that one person to write something in a certain way that you're like, oh, that's a loop. I understand what a loop is now.
Yeah.
Like I've read like 5 different articles, but this one just breaks it down so well that now I understand what a loop is. Or I never understood what a closure was before. Like, oh, okay, now I understand what a closure is. Or I never understood what promises were. Things like that. That you can write down and kind of think through as you're learning them and writing them down. And the third thing for me would be being comfortable being an imposter. And I say that because you will believe that you are an imposter for a long time. And I've met senior devs with like 30 years of experience, and they'll tell me the same thing. They're like, I work with one now, and he'll come to me, he'll be like, hey, does this code look good to you? And I'm like, you got way more experience than I do. You start asking me if this looks good. Like, I'm like, I could be asking you. And he's like, no. He's like, sometimes I second guess myself. You second guess yourself? What?
Yeah.
No, there's no way you second guess yourself. But it happens, right? Like we're all human, no matter how many years of experience we have or how many languages we know. So being comfortable, and I wrote an article about this too, like that imposter syndrome that you get. So like being comfortable being an imposter. You're not, right? You're not an imposter, but you will feel like it for a long time. But it's trying to get comfortable being that imposter until you're no longer an imposter, whereas you don't feel it as much. Right. So I think those are the things that I probably would have done. I definitely would have built more projects. I have projects on GitHub now in different languages, but I only learned that like after, right? Like after Treehouse, I was like, oh, well, the projects from Treehouse are enough. They know, right? People know, but they don't, right? they look at that and they're like, what have you built? So shortly afterwards, I started building this project called Recommend It, which was still in development. It's always like in development, but it's an application that allows companies to have people inside their company like recommend things to each other, right? So like if you're in a company pre-pandemic, right? You would probably come into a brand new company, not know anything, not know where things are probably, right? But you'd be able to go to this place where other people have recommended there's the best place to get your your car washed, or this is the best place to get your oil changed, or this is the best place to eat around here, right? So that was something that I saw a problem at my company that I was at, and I was like everyone has all these recommendations they're recommending, but like how would anybody know great things? And you get great things from all different people. So having it in one place would be awesome to be able to see, and then you could like them, you could share them, all that stuff. So like still in development. The website is up. You can technically use it, but I haven't done a lot to it since recommended.netlify.com. But but yeah, those are the things that I would have done had I known what I know now.
Cool. I really like that. I really like that we focus on, first of all, okay, I gotta sum this up. First of all, everyone here did a really good job of being able to show the vulnerable parts of their story. And I think those are the kind of stories that people really connect with. And because it's very easy to, when you don't meet other software engineers, to not see your path as this path that's going to lead to becoming a software engineer, because it's messy and you have bumps of motivation and then you lose it. And sometimes you give up for 6 months and life happens. And it's very easy to think, well, I'm just not meant to be a software engineer. And many people that share these vulnerable stories and share that they, sometimes they almost gave up. Sometimes, they couldn't even put a roof over their head. Some, like they had family to take care of. These are real situations. This is how self-taught developers, like these are probably more common situations than you realize for self-taught developers. And so hopefully this was encouraging for everyone. I appreciate you sharing your stories. This is all really good. We are out of time. So before I break my promise to you, let's go ahead and end this within 4 minutes. Let's go ahead and jump right into our outros. Feel free to shout something out. If you have a website, if you have Instagram, anything like that, shout it out. But Whitley, if people wanted to, where could they reach you?
I'm on LinkedIn, but a newer passion of mine in this new kind of chapter in life that I'm in is to help people that are wanting to change careers, that are kind of getting that itch, to learn how to code so I definitely share a lot on my Instagram about that. And, another piece of advice that I would give is find a mentor, find someone that is doing what you want to do, or, in the tech industry, not just a mentor to teach you how to code, but a mentor to tell you on those imposter days that they've been through it too. You know what I mean? So that being said, I have a passion for mentorship and that kind of thing. So I'm trying to do that over on my Instagram, which is whitleybone.png. And then my company, Alert Media, if you're in the Austin, Texas area, is actually hiring. They're on a hiring spree. So a bunch of developer positions open. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, I can send you that. I can send you that link to get you started there. So, yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. And if you ever have any questions about just like, I don't know where you're going to take the mentorship, but happy to tell you what not to do.
Oh, excellent.
The
yeah,
mistakes
you can be my mentor.
Sure.
You can be my mentor on how to mentor.
Sounds good. So for everyone watching, thank you so much. Definitely subscribe. We're going to keep doing videos like this, and keep suggesting videos. If you like this video, like it. If you have advice about the video, or you just, hey, if you like the video, also comment. It helps with the algorithm. I found that YouTube algorithm is a really tricky thing, but the more you guys talk in the comments, YouTube loves my videos, keeps promoting it, so keep doing it. Thank you. But yeah, just let me know what you think of this and what you want to see in the future. How about you, Jeremy?
Yeah. Thanks for having us on, Don. I enjoyed the last one, and I enjoyed this one quite a bit too. So if you ever have another topic, feel free to invite me if it's something I know about.
I'd love to.
As I said, I'm a principal engineer at GoHealth. We are hiring pretty aggressively in the Chicago area. So if any of you are out there looking for a job, maybe consider applying there.
That sounds good. If my business ever fails, your company is one of the ones I'm going to be applying to. Thank you. Aaron, how about you?
Yeah. So I'm on several different platforms, LinkedIn, obviously. And I'm on Twitter, at AB Develops. Also on Instagram, I post some things on there too. AB the Coder, on Instagram. And, I think that's about it. Yeah, my company's not hiring, but I know of some other companies that are. SalesLoft's hiring, and I think Terminus is also hiring too. They're SaaS companies, both great companies to work at. But yeah.
I love it. Just every software engineer wants to see others succeed. You're even just offering companies that you don't even work at. It's really cool. Thank you. All right. Well, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate this. Of course, we're going to do more videos. I have a bunch queued up. What I'm probably going to start doing within a few weeks is releasing 2 videos a week. So look out for that. But yeah, I really appreciate you watching. Subscribe. Whitley, Jeremy, Aaron, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, man. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is great.